Hello everyone, this is Alyssa Mooney and she'll be recording my speech today. Hello, my name is Joel Underwood and I'd like to talk about the difference in marriage since the 1960s to today. We all know that you can look at, your older marriages and you can definitely tell the difference between your older marriages and your younger couples. Um, does marriage still mean the same thing to people as it did way back in the 1960s? If so, why are we experiencing such a spike in divorce rates and a decrease in marriages in general? I'd like to inform you with all the reasons why in my speech. So most of us think about someone we're really close to when we think about marriage. When I think of marriage, I reflect on my parents' marriage, which is healthy but not perfect. Through thick and thin, they've kept together for many years. But is that what marriage is really about? Based on the increase in divorce rates, we can tell that instead of growing closer while enduring hard times, couples have begun to give up easier. This tells me that instead of fighting to keep the love going, people have given up and attempt to find a better love. So marriage has drastically changed since our past relatives' times, which with it being easier to divorce and more independent women, we have noticed higher divorce rates and less people get married at all. This is also caused by an increase in adoption rates. In order to fully understand how the concept of marriages have changed since the 1960s, you must learn the reasons why. So let's talk about how it is easier to divorce your spouse. So it has become easier to divorce your spouse since the 1960s. National Affairs wrote an article saying that in the late 1960s, a law was created that opened the floodgates of divorce and created what was known as the divorce revolution. Known as the No Fault Divorce Bill, created by Ronald Reagan of California, mainly because his wife divorced him on the basis of mental cruelty. Dee Linder also wrote an article called The Right to Marry. After marriage was claimed a fundamental right in 2013, the divorce rates then included same-sex marriage, which caused them to rise due to a higher population of marriages. Also, by looking at marriage as a fundamental right, it is legally giving married people more freedom to divorce from their spouse. Now that we have an understanding about why it is easier to divorce your spouse, let's move on to our second point, which is about the increase of independent women and women in today's workforce. So, more independent women. M. Gordon from Forbes.com wrote that millennial women are more financially dependent, which makes it easier for them to get jobs and support themselves and a child if necessary. This makes women more open to leave their spouse and still live a successful life if they felt the need. The Female Quotient wrote an article called All the Single Ladies. In today's world, it is all about ambition. This has encouraged women to go out and make a life for themselves instead of being a housewife. These women have caused a drastic drop in marriage rates in general by not taking the time to fall in love with a man and focusing all their time on their careers. While both of these previous statements make a huge impact, they still will not add up if the next point did not play a large factor in the decrease in marriage and divorce rates since the 1960s, which is the increase in adoption rates. S. Kosteliak wrote an article titled How Adoption Impacts a Marriage. Every parent needs to know what they're getting into before adopting a child. A recent report shows that many parents are getting in for more than they expect by adopting. Two factors that are hard for marriages to handle when they adopt or parenting a child with special needs and infertility, which is common in most adoption households, eventually leading to a divorce. Let's see. M. Ward wrote an article, The Impact of Adoption on the New Parents' Marriage. She stated that adoption had also strained marriages by making it harder on the married couple to transfer frequently and distinguish from a marriage to a parental role. Distinguishing between the two roles was hard on. Um, and in conclusion, marriage has drastically changed since our past relatives' time, with it being easier to divorce and more independent women. We have noticed higher divorce rates and less people getting married at all. This is also caused by an increase in adoption rates. And reviewing the question I asked at the beginning of this speech, does marriage still mean the same thing as it did to people way back when? The answer is no. Today's marriage gives women way more freedom, and it also gives the opportunity for both individuals to move on if one person felt necessary.